Hello, Alabama fans, and welcome to the inaugural BamaOnLine Big Show. This is the very first show where we're going to have every BOL talent. Today, you've got Tim Watts, who's a site publisher. That's me. Charlie Potter, who is our team extraordinaire in the black hat, the Rose Bowl hat, flew out to LA and represented the BOL staff in the game against Michigan. And Jimmy Stein, one of our favorite people, comes in. He discusses a little bit of anything and everything, but we're here and welcome to the show. We're glad to have you. And well, Charlie, the Kalen DeBoer era is here. Nick Saban era is about to officially end for the 10th time. Give us some thoughts on what we've walked into and where we stand heading into this game Saturday.
Yeah, you can actually really tell it's the end of the Nick Saban era because he's doing a little bit more commercials. He had one come out this morning. It's hilarious. It's with Verbo, and it's kind of taking a dig at Airbnb. But you can see Coach Saban doing some more things in his free time. But no, it's been a long off season. I think we can all attest to that. It's been an interesting one. But yeah, we're just a few days away from kickoff, and honestly, with the amount of access that we've been able to get from a media standpoint, we've almost run out of things to talk about. We've talked to these coaches and players so much since July 31st, and even going back to the spring, that it really feels like it's time to kick this thing off. So it's exciting. It's been a lot of fun to deal with just from a media standpoint. But yeah, it's a new era for sure.
I was blown away on the BOL roundtable, our message board of choice here, that we had a poster saying, "Does it seem like we have less access than we did under Saban?" And I was like, "We were like, oh, like what in the hell? What did we miss here?" Like, absolutely not, because we sat through 17, 18 years of that. Saban doesn't like any information. Now, there was always information out. I think there's a myth because you have other sites or other people, not saying any particular network, that talk about insider scoop on the team. A lot of it, especially in the offseason, turns out not to be true. We certainly heard all the hype about FSU and the best defensive line in history, all that stuff, and probably didn't turn out the way they thought. But Jimmy, give us some thoughts. I know you were right there with us going through the Saban era. It ends. I mean, I think officially, I mean, we've had several officials, but the kickoff Saturday is officially the final last official.
Yeah, honestly, the transition from Saban to DeBoer, I felt went way better than I imagined. I mean, because I've imagined this over the years. Who could not help but think ahead and think, hey, one day Nick Saban's not going to be doing this. He was, 72 years old. It's gone, I don't know, I guess smooth is the right word, but I anticipated controversy. I anticipated a lot more depression. I anticipated anger. I anticipated fans rejecting any change. Instead, I think largely due to Kalen DeBoer's personality and his win-loss record and the fact his team was in the national championship game last year, I think Kalen DeBoer has been embraced. I think the transition has been smooth. People are happy. People are excited. Now, it's all going to change when Alabama gives up a first down and when Alabama punts for the first time. I mean, I realize that. The games won't go perfectly, and then there will be some sort of lashing out as sports fans do, not just Alabama fans, but that's a sports fan thing. But I'm impressed by Greg Byrne, impressed by Kalen DeBoer, and largely impressed by the fan base that there has been, I would say, a group hug of Kalen DeBoer, because for years, I honestly admit, I anticipated some level of chaos.
I'll tell you what I think saved us from that was the short window when they actually hired him, because me and Charlie, we won't forget. Andrew doesn't forget. Joseph doesn't. When Saban retired until Kalen DeBoer arrived off that plane, it was chaos, and it wasn't even very long. We had, I had to stand in. What's the meme with the guy with the sword facing everybody, attack him? I had to
Jon
stand in the
Snow.
pocket a whole night saying Dan Lanning's not in Tuscaloosa. I don't care who's reporting it. It's all came from one fake news source. There's no way he was there, even with the Magic DeLorean. But I do think it was chaos, and there was an initial reaction to that's the best we can do, because I think that's the nature when you get somebody, especially from the West Coast. There's not a lot of people in the South watching West Coast sports. I go through this in the draft and watching the Dodgers and the Lakers or whatever I do. They just didn't know a lot about him. So I think anybody was less than Nick Saban. But I do think it helped us that we went through 6 years of Saban's leaving, Saban's leaving, Saban's leaving. So we kind of get numb to it. You kind of like, oh, well, we knew it would happen, because eventually it did happen. Charlie, tell us, you mentioned some of the access that's been different, and tell us about talking to assistant coaches, and not only that, getting them on video, and they look happy to talk to you. Tell us some of your takeaways from the coaching staff you've met and just the access you've been given.
Yeah, it's been great. It's completely new because outside of the postseason when they have like their media day and the whole team is available, we've never talked to assistants. You'd have the coordinators for a media day in the fall, and then you wouldn't hear from them again until at least December. So we've gotten Kane Womack and Nick Sheridan every week. That's going to be the case every game week too. It'll be Mondays with Coach DeBoer and the two coordinators. After I guess they don't practice on Monday. That's also different, but no, we're going to hear from the assistant coaches today, and it's been great because you can find out little nuances. Like today, you have a couple of assistants not named Nick Sheridan that were a part of the Western Kentucky staff at one point. So they're familiar with this program. You can get those kind of storylines that are a little different. You can just dive a little deeper. Hearing from Coach Cap about the offensive line, he's been pretty upfront and honest that he's fine with the rotation there. So I'm sure we'll hear the same from him later today if he comes up. Mo Linguist has been awesome to deal with. You almost feel like when you hear from him and guys like Jamarcus Shepard, it's like a pep talk, but in a good way. So
Yeah.
it's been a lot of fun. Again, you can kind of dive into their position groups a little deeper because Kalen DeBoer, while he's been great with his time, only has so much of it, and you can't ask him about every single player on the roster. So to get these assistant coaches not only once but multiple times in the preseason, I feel like we've been able to learn a lot more about the roster. On top of being allowed at practice and be able to watch 8 of them. So it's been refreshing, just from a reporter standpoint, someone that's ears perk up on quotes. It's been almost overwhelming, overstimulating to a sense whenever we've been able to talk to all these guys.
Okay. Jimmy, you've been at every practice too, pretty much. Met these guys, talked to them. There's guys we never, I remember that I knew it was different when I got a text because they did an interview with Freddie Roach, and one of my buddies said, I didn't know Freddie Roach could talk. And I was like, you're right. Him and Gillespie have been here. We didn't know they had a voice, So give us some of your thoughts on the guys you met or what you've seen or just the practice pace or in general thoughts on Alabama overall.
Yeah, sure. Partly because I'm super old. I've been able to attend some practices over the years through all the different coaches, really. And the way I would describe DeBoer's practices, particularly compared to the previous staffs, whether it was Saban or Stallings or Shula, youthful energy. And I'm going to say this and get criticized because people will take it the wrong way, but I mean it 100% as a compliment. There's almost a high school feel to it. And by high school, what I mean is the attitude and personalities on the field. Everyone's having fun. There's a lot of fun that's being had out there. And I would say the Saban practices were very businesslike. Teams tend to follow the personalities of the head coach. And there was no more businesslike coach than Nick Saban. But this team has sort of bought into the new feelings, the new personality of not just Kalen DeBoer, but this staff. They have a lot of fun. Charlie and I were at one practice where they parked an ice cream truck at the end of practice on the 50-yard line. And the players got to enjoy ice cream on the 190-degree day in Tuscaloosa that afternoon. But just youthful energy, a lot of fun, but it is organized and they get a ton of reps and they get a ton of work done. I do not mean to imply in any way that they're not about their business. They're working hard, practicing hard, but youthful energy is the best way I can describe the difference between how they practice now versus how they've practiced in the past.
That's not surprising when you have a coach as old, not only just older, but old school as Nick Saban. I mean, he comes from the oldest of schools. For him to have the practice, you come from that. And I talk to some of the older guys, obviously I have older friends, and they even the guys I went to school with think they drank their own sweat. They thought they didn't drink water. They just drank, they rehydrated, they drank their spit. And I'm like, that wasn't true. Your mom used to check you out because you'd fake sick so you could get out of practice, So I get that old school vibe versus the new school vibe. Charlie, heading into this game, what are your thoughts? I haven't given a lot of thought to it this week, but heading into this game, the home opener, how do they match up? What are you looking forward to? Some of the questions you might have. Just give us some thoughts heading into the game versus Western Kentucky.
Yeah, a lot of my attention is more on Alabama, and that's not really a disrespect to Western Kentucky, but I expect them to win this game pretty handily. But I'm really curious about the cornerback position. Number one, I think that they have talent there. It's just really unproven. Damani Jackson's played a little at USC. Even Jimmy and I remember talking to him earlier in the preseason about how this is really his sophomore year of college. He's missed a lot of time in high school and at USC. Bringing in a guy like Deshaun Jones, I'm interested to see what role he plays and what he looks like coming over from Wake Forest. And then you have some true freshmen. I think that position to me is the most fascinating because right tackle's kind of in the same spot with unproven players battling for a spot on the field. But the rest of the offensive line looks to be in really good shape. And I think if Wilkin Formby or Elijah Pritchett can step up to the challenge, then that group can be improved from last year. And they can't really be much worse just in terms of what they gave up from a sack standpoint. So corner for me. And then I don't know if you're asking Jimmy this question too, so this might steal it from him, but just Jalen Milroe, what he looks like in this offense. I think that's something a lot of people are interested in. He's been really positive about working with Coach DeBoer and Coach Sheridan this preseason. And then yesterday when he came up, he and the other captains and some of Alabama's specialists, he talked about how much fun he's having. And it's easy for a guy to come off the field, especially a quarterback, having just processed everything. You could be tired. You could go through the motions, but Jalen had a big smile on his face, and he's having a lot of fun. And I think the coaching staff have just filled him with confidence. They've worked the offense around him, played to his strengths. I think Jalen recognizes that. And if he's on the same trajectory that it sounds like he's on from the spring, from the end of last season and what he was able to do in the summer, I think he can have a big year. So I think just a lot of eyeballs are going to be on Jalen Milroe. Of course, he's going to face tougher defenses down the road, but just what he looks like in his debut in this new offense, I think it's going to be fascinating to see play out.
Jimmy, talk to us from a fan's perspective. I can tell you this: I'm taking the whole Watts clan up there to see the opener for Kalen DeBoer, which is rare air. I don't like to leave the house unless it's to Europe. So we're going to the home opener. I'm pretty excited to see what the crowd's like and to see. I was there when Nick Saban kicked off, when Shula kicked off the first game at home. So Curry, just give us your thoughts on what you're expecting. Game day atmosphere, pregame, postgame, just everything you're expecting to see around the quad and on campus, and what the fan reactions are going to be when that new head coach runs out there.
I think excitement. I think there'll be excitement. I don't think it's going to be a sad thing. I don't think it'll be a where's Nick thing. I don't think it'll be a funeral for the Saban era. I think it'll generally be excitement. And in part, let's be honest, fans are really into offense. I figured this out years ago going to A-Day when fans cheer every good offensive play. And even though I'm like, the defense just gave up 60 yards, the fans cheer for offense. And DeBoer is an offensive guy, and Alabama's probably going to score a lot of points on Saturday night. I mean, I think Alabama's going to score in the 50s, to be honest. Western Kentucky lost to Ohio State last year 63-10. I wouldn't be surprised if the score ended up even in that area. So I think a lot of excitement. Milroe is a star. The fans all know who he is. It's not like a new quarterback that has to be introduced to the fans. They know this guy. They cheer for this guy. I think it's going to be a little bit for you and the family, Tim, a bit of a carnival type atmosphere. There'll be, for those who haven't been to games in a while, they do such a great job around the stadium now. It really can turn into an all-day fun family thing. But bring your sunscreen and water. It's going to be hot.
Yeah, I have to do that in December. So the sunscreen, yeah, I was talking to our new guy, Blake Byler, who y'all are going to meet later, and the pains of being fair-skinned. We were talking about getting our arms sunburned because we hung it out the window a few times in our life. But I agree with you. I think it's going to be an exciting day. I think people will be excited. I think the one thing that we can't overlook is how visible Nick Saban has been and how easy that's made the transaction. Because if he'd have just said goodbye, thank you, shook a hand, and we had no idea where he was, I think there'd be a lot more concern. There'd be a lot more speculation, how he left, why he left, and all that. But the fact he's so good, I think I see him more now than I did when he was the coach, especially in the offseason. I mean, he's in a lot of places. He's doing a lot of interviews, and I don't think there's any doubt that the energy that he seems to have now is totally different. He's living the life of a retiree. All right, Charlie, before Jimmy gets out of here, Jimmy, I want you to give us some final thoughts heading into this, just your final thoughts before we let you go and bring in out with the old and bring in the slightly less old. I can say that because I'm as old as Jimmy, but we're going to bring Andrew Bone in soon. But Jimmy, give us some final thoughts before we head out of here.
Yeah, sure. I think Alabama wins handily Saturday night. I mean, I haven't fully settled on a score, but I think I'm going to have Alabama in the 50s and Western Kentucky around 10. I think it'll be an easy win. I think the offense is going to show off. But here's my one loud prediction, and I'll talk about this in a prediction piece I'll do tomorrow. But Ryan Williams will make a big play. There will be at least one big Ryan Williams play, whether that's just a long reception, whether it's an actual touchdown, a punt return. I mean, there will be a big Ryan Williams play, and that will be all the buzz on Sunday.
All right, Jimmy Stein fantastic. We look forward to this next week. And again, this is going to be a weekly feature. And before Jimmy gets out of here, we want y'all to do us a favor. Hit that like button and subscribe. We've already passed 10,000. We're heading to 20,000. Charlie Potter was even excited to hit that 10,000 mark, which, hey, if we get Charlie excited, that he just amps me up even more. That's why he tries not to do it. But, Jimmy, we appreciate you. You guys like and subscribe, and we're going to welcome in Andrew Bone. And Jimmy Stein will see you in the future. There he is, Andrew.
What a transition for you there.
That was smooth. I was worried.
Did y'all not like the out with the old and in with the not quite as old? I thought I was just leading that in. Andrew, you're laughing, or Charlie, you're laughing, but next is Blake.
Yeah.
Now you'll be the old guy. Everybody.
Hey, we're more making fun of your ability with technology than anything else.
Hey, hey, look, I'm the king of making fun of my ability with technology. I'm the king of that. Andrew Bone, welcome in the show. Our senior recruiting writer, analyst extraordinaire, Alabama grad, loves Alabama like the rest of us, and we'll definitely be watching that game. Tell us some thoughts, Andrew. You heard us. We got some thoughts from Jimmy and Charlie. Tell us your thoughts. Saban era's gone, Kalen DeBoer era ends, and just focus on this game and, kind of what you're thinking a few days before kickoff.
Yeah, it's probably the most excited that you are in a long time, just because you kind of knew what to expect every single year during the Nick Saban era. They're gonna, they've had all off, the whole off season. They're gonna go out and just absolutely destroy whoever they're gonna play. It didn't really matter who the opening game was. They were gonna go out and win by 21 plus points. But now, obviously, Coach DeBoer comes in. It's going to be a new offense, new look offense. But there's a lot of the same players, and I think when a lot of those players run out onto the field, the guys that stayed, the leaders on this team, the Tyler Bookers, the Jalen Milrose, Malachi Moores, Devontae Smith, the guys that really helped hold this team together when all that crap hit the fan. Back in January, I think you're going to hear a loud roar for those guys, because they really did a great job of holding it together. And we all talk about, all the guys that left, and all, the national media loves to talk about it. They lost so much. All these guys hit the portal. There was only really a few guys that were major contributors that hit the transfer portal. Alabama was able to shore up some of those areas during the offseason. So I'm excited about this team. I'm excited about, Jalen Milroe, what he's going to be able to do in this offense. Can his season be as good as his offseason? Because he's had about as good of an offseason as anybody that we've seen, from just all the NIL deals that he's gotten, the trip to New York. I mean, we've seen him everywhere. Being in studio on CBS. I mean, those are all great things. But now it's time to play, and that's what people care about. They want to see how he's going to perform on the field, and all the positive things that you've heard from Coach Sheridan, Coach DeBoer about Jalen's growth. I think it's going to be a great season for him. I'm really looking forward to seeing what he's going to be able to do.
You make a good point, especially with the transfers, because I was surprised in the offseason with some of the Florida radio I was asked to do where they talked about the Alabama. I mean, I had a radio host get mad at me because I guess I was supposed to tell him every transfer Florida State got was going to be some superhero. And I was like, no. And I told you, I love Roy Dale Williams. You love him. He was a great kid. I think we all respect him. We liked him in the recruiting process. We hope he does great. If he goes to Florida State and win the Heisman, we'd all be happy for him. But a lot of these guys weren't coming in expected to come into this season, these game changers and game breakers. And, they all had a role, but I mean, it wasn't a whole lot. So I think you make a very valid point with the overreaction to what was lost. And to me, and I'm going to let Charlie talk about this, I honestly don't think we talk enough, the national media especially, about what they brought in. I don't think we talk about Jeremy Bernard or Overton or Dominique or Saab and Proctor. They brought in 5 or 6 guys that are not only starters but contributors or heavy contributors. Charlie?
Yeah, I mean, what they were able to do on both sides of the ball, I think, is big because you look at bringing in Parker Brailsford. That's an immediate upgrade over the center position from last year. Jeremy Bernard has the potential to be wide receiver 1 in this offense. I think Josh Cuevas can be a big receiving threat at the tight end position. Then you look on the defensive side of the ball, the position that was most impacted by the transfer portal was the secondary. And to add Damani Jackson, to bring in Keon Saab, and then to add some depth pieces like Deshaun Jones, who could be a starter in game 1, and then Cam Howard and King Mack. But I think even an LT Overton is huge because he's been a guy that has really turned some heads this preseason. So I'm probably leaving some guys out. Graham Nicholson, the kicker,
Yeah.
That's a huge spot that they filled via the transfer portal.
Yeah.
So this is a new area of college football, but it's a way to supplement your roster. And I mean, guys like Damani Jackson, LT Overton were on board before Nick Saban retired. So they were already putting those pieces in place. But for this staff to be able to retain those guys and then to add what they were able to do after they arrived in town and then in the spring addressing some positions of need, you could add Caden Proctor to that list. Getting him back is a gigantic move in the offseason. So I think the transfer portal, I think when Nick Saban retired, they had 10 guys enter the portal, and 9 of them did so after Kalen DeBoer was hired as the head coach. I think Isaiah Bond just decided to jump in regardless. But 10 after the legendary head coach retires, you'll take that, I think, just from a win-loss standpoint. It's not, again, the defensive backfield is the one that's impacted the most, but overall, you didn't lose a ton of guys that were going to contribute at least this season.
Yeah, the secondary, when I talk to Bama fans, they think the biggest impact from the portal was the secondary, but Bama's losing them to the NFL. Their top talent went to the NFL in first round pass, draft picks, Kool-Aid, Terry and Arnold, those guys that were obviously contributors. They were going to need people anyways, regardless whether or not Saban stayed. You make a good point about 10's not a lot because, Andrew, you can discuss this, but when Kalen DeBoer, when he first got here, you remember the blank checks that were being screened for T-Rob, right? The whole roster was leaving. There's a lot of blank, people want to write a blank check. It's never their name on that check. It's always somebody else's. But there was a lot of panic that this whole team was going to leave. We heard the great job, and you mentioned that Jalen did of helping keep guys here, Malachi Moore. Kind of talk about that and, the reaction to keeping everybody that you wanted for the most part and not losing guys. And again, you mentioned Isaiah Bond, and he was close to leaving with Nick Saban. So without Nick Saban, that was a no-brainer. He was out the door. So talk about that a little bit, Andrew.
I mean, I think you look back, 8 months ago and fast forward to now, and, it's a completely different feeling than it was when Coach Saban first retired because everybody was just in scramble mode. Everybody was panicking. Everybody was worried. Alabama football was, no more, the program needed to close the doors and everybody was leaving. But, a lot of these guys stayed and, they became big leaders. They were able to, once they got their foot in the door and they were able to sit down with a lot of these guys because there were probably – half the team was probably thinking about transferring at one point as soon as Coach Saban retired. But they waited. They sat down with Coach DeBoer. They sat down with Courtney Morgan. They sat down with all these guys to kind of, get their perspective on things. Nick Saban talked to a lot of those kids as well. So there was a lot of people around the program, even guys that were on that support staff, the Josh Chapmans of the world, Denzel DeVos, HaHa Clinton Dix, Jamie Mosley. Those guys were the ones who really worked to kind of help those guys kind of look beyond, Nick Saban's retired. He's no longer here, but give this guy a chance. Let him sit down. Let him talk to you. Let him show you his vision. Because Alabama wasn't going to go out and just hire, somebody just random. They were going to go out and hire somebody that was a great football coach that got along, had a great relationship with people, great personality. And once they got him in the door, they just had to really have conversations with all these different kids. And once they were able to have those conversations, we saw more and more guys decide, hey, you know what, I'm going to stick it out. And then you get to the spring, you go through spring practice with them because there were also probably a lot of guys who were thinking, all right, I'm going to go through spring practice with these coaches, see how I like it, and then make a decision. Did you see a lot of guys leave after spring practice? You didn't. You know, I think there was Charlie maybe four.
Charlie knows.
But they weren't starters. You know, they weren't guys who were going to be major contributors to this program this upcoming season. Maybe not next season either. So you're able to keep your core guys, your big impact players happy, and based on the videos, the conversations, all the interviews that we've seen from so many different players throughout the last, which the access, as Charlie knows, has been obviously unbelievable for the team guys, and you see how excited and pumped these players are about this coaching staff, about this team, and it's more of a brotherhood, it seems like, than we have almost ever seen before with this Alabama team. And you got to contribute a lot of that to the players who stayed behind, who kept the team going, and who, 4 of them are now, team captains heading into the season.
Yeah, I think one thing that kind of played into the minds of Alabama fans is we heard for years who would take this job, right? Dabo doesn't want it. Half the fans didn't want Dabo. This coach wouldn't take it. Who wants to follow Nick Saban? I know a lot of people were pissed, honestly, that they got a coach that played in the national championship game. I don't know anybody that doesn't think Kalen DeBoer can't coach football. Not a single human being that's even mentioned that. But I think that factored in, because if you remember the last 2 real coaching searches Alabama had, there was some drama. Nick Saban, you were a long time without a coach before Nick Saban was hired. Mike Shula, Mike Price, there had been a lot of drama. So for this to go 41, 40, whatever, 43 hours, whatever it was, really was in a way a blessing to kind of put it at ease, because then they instantly shift, well, can he recruit? We just shifted into that where me and you have to answer that question a lot. Charlie's like, thank you, pass the torch. Charlie, coming into this with this team, Kalen DeBoer, you've got to meet him. Tell me some of the tell me some of the qualities you've taken from him. And we know who Nick Saban is. He was pretty transparent, but it's not to compare him to Saban, but just talk about the kind of person he is, the kind of the feel you get from him. Because Charlie's been one-on-one talking to him and seen him in a group setting in several different settings. So tell us kind of your thoughts on him.
I think he's consistent. It's different than Nick Saban. Nick Saban is also a very consistent and constant individual, but Kalen DeBoer is consistent. He's way more laid back. I think you can see that in what we've talked about with the practice access, with the interviews and everything. It's just a way more laid back feel, but he's consistent. He's very personable. Working on these game program stories for UA, getting a chance to see his office whenever it was barren, left behind by what Nick Saban had, and then now to what he's renovated. We'll talk on the record for like 10 minutes, and then you look down at your watch and you've been in his office for an hour because he's just asking about your family and things like that. We took a vacation up to Washington. Obviously, he's very familiar with the Seattle area, and that's what he liked to talk about. So it's been great. It's completely different than the last regime from that regard, but he's been consistent all off season long, and he's consistent in his press conferences. He'll answer any questions. It might not be as direct as Nick Saban, but you can ask him anything, and you don't have to worry about getting your head bit off in a press conference. So it's just been from a strictly media standpoint, I think it's been really good so far. Obviously, we'll see what happens when the season kicks off. I don't think he's going to change, though, because hearing from people that he's been with back to his days at Sioux Falls, he's just always the same person every day. He brings that same approach and mentality. And I think that having that level-headedness is a good thing, taking over a program like this. But it also takes a guy that is confident in himself, is consistent in his convictions, and I think that's exactly what Kalen DeBoer is. And so far, obviously, we'll get to game day and the season here soon, but so far through this offseason, we talked about it before with Jimmy, I don't think you could ask for a better transition, and I don't know that many other people could have done it the way that Kalen DeBoer and the staff have.
All right, Charlie Potter, thanks for your time. We know you got to head out to practice. We're going to bring in Blake Byler. I've been saying his name wrong, even though I've talked to him 10 times. I'm telling you, there's an N that should be in Blake. It should be Bliner. It should not be Byler. The parents should have named it Tyler Byler. But anyways, we're going to bring in Blake. Charlie, thanks for your time as always.
See you guys.
We enjoy this and something we'll be doing every week. See you soon, Charlie.
See ya.
And Blake.
There he is.
Hey guys, how's it going?
Tyler Byler's here. What's up, Blake? It's good to have you on the show, man. For those that don't know, Blake joined us last week on the 15th, 2 weeks ago, 16th, and he's a basketball guy for you hoops guys. Y'all been clamoring for more basketball coverage, so he's here for that. But he also loves football. He's along the same lines of me and Andrew. We're fans of the just about anything that they're bouncing or throwing or catching. So, Blake, welcome to the show. Tell us a little bit about yourself, and let's get you in here and haze you a little bit.
Yeah, thanks, guys. So just kind of to introduce myself, my name is Blake Byler. Sorry, my computer's having some problems. I'm back on here now. I graduated from the University of Alabama in December. I've been covering Alabama in some kind of former capacity since about 2021. Gotten to cover a whole bunch of different sports. I've covered golf, softball, baseball, men's basketball, women's basketball, football, you name it. So if there's an Alabama sport in recent years, I've been around it. Grew up in Hoover, Alabama, so I've grown up kind of around the program and seen obviously all of Nick Saban's run and everything like that. But I'm really excited to be here. Love BOL, loved what we have been doing for a really long time around here, and I'm excited to be a part of it.
All right, so I'm going to ask a question Andrew's thinking. What's it like to work with Charlie Potter day to day, hour to hour? What's it like to work with Mr. Potter, who really is, in all seriousness, the best in the business? You can't find a more professional guy than Charlie. Have a guy also, I don't want to speak presumptuously, but almost a mentor, because he knows the team aspect and he knows how to cover this beat.
Oh, yeah. Couldn't ask for a better partner than Charlie and what he's able to do. I mean, when you talk about somebody who has everything in order, I don't think that describes anyone better than Charlie. He always knows what's going on. He always knows who's going to be where and at what time. And he's extremely organized, which makes it easy for me. I'm also an organized person, so we work well together. But it's been a really great first, I guess, almost 2 weeks now. It's felt like it's been, hasn't even been that long. It's kind of flown by, but he's been great to work with. And it's been a great start, I would say.
It kind of balances it out, doesn't it? A couple of guys that are organized, and then they got us.
Yeah,
I guess so.
We do not want you to be here we don't want you to be too organized, Blake. So me and Andrew will come in here, our shirt untucked and our hat sideways. So Andrew, give us some thoughts here. We're going into the game. I want you and Blake both to talk about, you already given your thoughts. Tell us what you think about the team itself. What are your expectations for this football game? Not so much the atmosphere, but what are you looking for? What do you want to see as an Alabama fan from the offense, from the defense, from the special teams, from the soundtrack, anything you want to talk about?
I want to see some perfect snaps all day long. That's the only thing I want to see. That's the only thing I care about. Hey, you get the ball to the quarterback on every single play, you're going to have a lot of fans loving you. There's going to be so many Parker Brailsford jerseys out there this season. If he can get the ball there, he's going to be – I mean, he doesn't have to worry about NIL anymore if he just gets the ball to Jalen, because he's going to people are going to be buying his jerseys all year long. This is going to be there's going to be more eyes on Parker Brailsford than Jalen Milroe in this game. I'm really excited. I mean, really. But I'm excited to see the transfers, and I know a lot of people are excited about the freshmen. But how are these transfers going to adapt? How are they going to adjust? How are they going to play? With this new group out there, because you've got guys who are being put in significant positions, especially in the defensive backfield with Damani Jackson and Deshaun Jones coming in. You're replacing two. I'm gonna call them first rounders and Kool-Aid, even though he was just in the second. But Tara and Arnold. I mean, those were two significant losses, obviously, for Alabama. How is Damani and Deshaun or Jalen or Xavier Brown? How are those guys going to step up and play this week? So I think over the next couple of weeks, you want to build some consistency. You want to get those game reps in before you do travel to Wisconsin, before you do play against Georgia. You want to get a lot of those guys a little bit more experience, especially the freshmen. Whether it's on the offensive or defensive side of the ball. But really looking forward to the game overall. The environment, the atmosphere. Somebody asked on our board the other day. They said, "Is Nick Saban or Miss Terry going to be at the game? I don't think we know the answer to that. Obviously, Coach Saban's on College game day for in College Station this week. He could fly back, but he could also let it just be Coach DeBoer's debut and let all the attention be on him this weekend and let him have his moment. But I think there's a lot of excitement with the fan base. I think it's going to be packed out. When you can get Tim Watts into Bryant-Denny Stadium, that's a big deal, because as long as I've known Tim, I never hear about him traveling down to Tuscaloosa, Alabama. This is a big deal. So
I had lunch with you once. In my defense, it was a good burger, by the way. What was the name of that place?
Jack Brown's.
Jack Brown's.
Tuscaloosa. So I think when we went down to Tuscaloosa back in July, you were around the program. You kind of soaked it in. It was a dreary day, but it was still one of those days where, man, I love being down here.
Yeah,
I'm gonna bring my family back down here, and that's what Tim Watts is doing this weekend.
It's pretty amazing what Tuscaloosa is. Blake's young. I don't know if he remembers it, but obviously he's too young. But 20 years ago and what it is now, I mean, this is like the pictures of the difference of everything, just driving down the street and seeing the buildings and everything Nick Saban did.
The condo complex that I lived in at Alabama was brand new when I was in school there. Brand new. And I'm not that old, I don't think, but I mean, I'm not.
You're pretty old.
Okay. So you go back down there and it's completely leveled and it's a whole new complex. I'm like, why did y'all need a new complex? And then you start thinking, man, that was 20 years ago.
Yeah. And I got the whole Andrew Bone tour everywhere we went. Hey, I had my first beer there. Hey, I got a fight here. Hey, that used to be, yeah, he had hey, I kissed a girl that was 24 years old first time. No, I'm just kidding. Audrey, I'm just kidding. But Blake, let's talk a little hoops before we get you out of here. We have not talked hoops. We got a spring. It looks like it's sold out. Did that Memphis game already sell out the practice game? It was low on tickets.
I'm not sure if it has or not.
It was low on tickets by Friday. I checked for a buddy of mine. We're going to go up to that too. But you got a practice game selling out, it looks like, in Huntsville, and a lot of excitement. Tell us some of your thoughts about the upcoming season, Blake.
Well, I think, at least in my lifetime, and as far as I can remember, this is the most anticipated Alabama basketball season, maybe in the history of the program, when you think about the fact that the team's coming off of a Final Four, the first in school history. So the program just reached heights that it's never reached before. And really, this run of success that Nate Oates has had since the 2021 season has probably been the most consistent run of success the Alabama basketball program has seen, at least since Wimp Sanderson, but maybe ever, as far as getting high seeds in the NCAA tournament, winning SEC regular season titles, winning SEC tournaments, all of that. And then you couple all of that with the fact that Mark Sears, an All-American, is returning. Grant Nelson, one of the best players on last year's team, is returning. So you've got key returning pieces on top of the number 2 recruiting class in the country, one of the top transfer classes in the country. On paper, it looks like it's the best team that Nate Oates has ever put together at any of his stops, especially at Alabama. And so all of that combined with coming off of the Final Four, you've got people really excited. And I think just the fact that it's hard to find tickets to an exhibition game in the middle of football season up in Huntsville, the fact that that's really hard to find tickets to, and that those are going really quickly. They've only been on sale for not even a week now. I think that shows how excited fans are for this season, and to see a team that's going to be a national championship contender. Not that Alabama hasn't had national championship level caliber teams under Nate Oates in the past, but we kind of know and understand that that's how good this team can be going into the season. So I think that's building up even more excitement, rather than going in thinking it's going to be a pretty good team, and then a month in you realize, wow, this team is Final Four good. We know that ahead of time, and so I think that's bringing up even more excitement around the fan base and around people that have been kind of waiting for a long time for Alabama to field one of those preseason top 5, even top 2, top 1 potentially teams like this one's going to be.
Yeah, I tell you, the thing that's interesting for me is that, I mean, I've spent a lot. I'm a basketball first guy. When I got in this business, I was running a basketball scouting service when I was hired, and love football too, but basketball I've always had a special bond with, but to see the Bama fans having to adjust. I've had friends that wouldn't watch basketball for years, and now the Final Four. I know it's different because I've had 6 people I know ask me if Bama can go undefeated because they're preseason number 1. I'm like, dude, I swear to God, you got to get on Google. You got to get on Wikipedia. You got to understand this is not football. There's so many games, but I've enjoyed the fans that have suffered so long. I mean, again, 2 years ago, number 1 team, number 1 overall seed, didn't make it past the Sweet 16, totally heartbreak. And then to turn around with a team that half of us, didn't think had much of a run in them at all, turn around, make a Final Four. They didn't just make a Final Four run. They gave Connecticut what for? As good as anybody else did. So all valid points. Blake, before we get you out of here and welcome in Joseph Hastings, tell us a little bit about your football thoughts and your expectations walking into this game Saturday.
You talking about the game or just the program?
Yeah,
in
just
general?
the game, the not Nick Saban. You probably a little bit different, younger view for you, just seeing Kalen DeBoer, the excitement of a new staff, what you expect from this team, all of it.
Yeah, I think it's exciting to see the change. And I mean, for me, pretty much as long as I can remember Alabama football, Nick Saban's been the head coach. So it's very different to see a new regime and to see the way that things are run differently. But one thing that's really stuck out to me is the way that Kalen DeBoer isn't trying to be Nick Saban 2.0 or anything like that. Like everything he does from you look at the differences in their offices to the way he runs practice. He moved practice to the morning to playing music at practice. The addition of using social media and just like everything that Kalen DeBoer does, it's clear that he's trying to be his own coach. And I think that's really important when you're following arguably the greatest coach of all time in Nick Saban. You don't want to come in and try to just copy everything he does. Because no one's ever going to be Nick Saban, and no one's going to be able to emulate and copy the exact formula that Nick Saban did to have the success that he did at Alabama. So I think that's really encouraging to see that Kalen DeBoer is trying to be his own coach. We've seen that he's won everywhere he's been, so he's been successful doing things his own way, and he's bringing that to a program that has all the resources he could want and all of that at Alabama. And so he's trying to implement his own system and is going to do it his own way. And we know he's been successful doing that. As far as the game goes against Western Kentucky, I'm really interested to see Alabama's secondary. And I'm sure y'all have talked about that on the show already with kind of the freshmen and the transfers and how it's kind of a brand new group. But specifically against this Western Kentucky passing offense. Tyson Helton, the head coach there, has been there for, I think he's going into his 5th year. But pretty much as long as he's been there, Western Kentucky has been one of the best passing offenses in the group of 5. I don't know if y'all remember Bailey Zappi a couple years ago. He plays for, I think he's with the Patriots now, but when he was there in 2021, he broke like every Joe Burrow record that he set 2 years before, like passing yards, passing touchdowns. Last year, the team ranked like top 15 in passing yards, top 5 in passing touchdowns. So this is and Kane Womack was talking about it the other day, that this is a Western Kentucky offense that loves to push the ball down the field vertically. And obviously the quarterback is also familiar. TJ Finley was at Auburn, was at LSU. He's played Alabama a couple times. He played Kane Womack last year while he was at Texas State. So he's on his 4th school, his 3rd meeting with Alabama, and his 2nd meeting with Kane Womack. So there's a lot of familiarity with TJ Finley and with what he does and what he brings. But I just think the system that Western Kentucky likes to run offensively is going to provide a pretty unique challenge for Alabama, because obviously talent-wise, there's not going to be much of a one-to-one. I think it's going to be a pretty heavy mismatch in terms of Alabama's guys versus Western Kentucky's guys. But schematically, I think it's going to be really interesting to see how this Alabama secondary has gelled, kind of how they've started to understand the new defense and throwing them out there against a fairly prolific schematically offense is going to be interesting and can kind of show Alabama fans what to expect from this group going forward. I think it's a good test, and I think they'll be able to get better from it rather than just playing some bad offense that can't move the ball downfield. I think it's going to be an interesting challenge.
Well, all right, Blake, you didn't get cut from the BOL Big Show. I think we're going to actually have you back. We didn't tell you, but this was an audition. This is a big 13 minutes for you right now, Tiger. So welcome to BamaOnLine. We're excited. I enjoyed talking to you. We're still going to get you that lunch. Me and Andrew are going to meet you somewhere in Birmingham, Hoover area, maybe walk-ons. We're giving a lot of free promotions today. We got to reach out. We eat a lot, so we go talk about it. We're going to get some promotions. But Blake, thanks for coming on. Welcome to BOL. And Blake, you have a good day. I know you're headed to practice. We're going to bring in Joseph Hastings.
Thanks, Blake.
We're going
All
to
right,
see
thanks,
what he's
guys.
doing today. See you, Blake. And Bama fans, welcome back, our world-traveling, Italian-tanned, I'd say London, but they don't have a sun. Italian-tanned.
It comes back no longer the youngest person on BOL.
I know.
The two youngest ones are wearing collared shirts still on our appearance, so trying to make a good impression.
That's just trying to, when you're comfortable, hey, when you've proven yourself like me and Andrew, you don't even have to wear a shirt. I got no pants on right now. That's how we do it when you're proven. Welcome back, Joseph Hastings. We hope you had a great trip. We're definitely going to get on some of that talk about some of that trip later on. But Joseph was on the road.
Hold on. Did you hear what Blake said? As long as he can remember.
When Blake said that, I heard nothing else he said. I'm gonna be honest. He's he said my whole Joseph said that one time on the board. I didn't talk to him for a week. He said my whole life. I'm like, that's nothing. That's called a semester in college.
We were covering recruiting when the first year Mike Shula was at Bama.
But did you hear me lead in like, Blake, your thoughts on Saban? I'm not even sure you knew Saban. You know what I mean? Like, I was going to go to Saban's arrival. He was like 3.
Good thing you didn't ask him who Gene Stalling was.
Well, then I saw him go blank when I mentioned Mike Price. He glazed over. He's like, let me Google Mike. So, yes.
Bone talked on one show about VHS tapes and doing that for the recruiting highlights. I had to check out at that point.
Do you know what a VHS tape is, Joseph?
I do know what it is, but I think I've maybe had my hands on a couple of them in my lifetime.
The problem for Joseph, he's not only young, he's uncultured. I had to tell him Top Gun was streaming once. He said, that'd be cool if I could find it streaming. I'm like, I got to kill this kid.
It was good. I watched it.
But the fact you didn't know that they had old movies streaming, I said, Joseph, what are we talking about?
Yeah,
it was good.
Then he tells you how he watched it with Miles Teller in it.
Yeah.
No, I watched Top Gun 2 before I watched Top Gun 1. Yeah.
It's the same movie. Tom Cruise just kind of got older. He aged 3 years and 30 years. Let's get to recruiting. Andrew Bone, let's talk about your visitor list. Let's get some thoughts. You got a good story up today. You've listed the visitors coming in. I think it's a good list for Western Kentucky. This is not you mentioned whether or not Saban would come to this game. I think he might be like a recruit. You want to come to this? You want to come to Georgia? If you come to this, you're definitely coming to Georgia, though. I feel comfortable in saying that. So talk about your list and some of the guys coming in, and we'll get Joseph to chime in on where some of these things stand.
Yeah, I think, for your first season opener, when it's usually not an SEC opponent, you're not going to get a lot of the big names on campus, but you do want to get your commitments on campus. And we're going to see some Alabama commits back in Tuscaloosa this weekend. Duke Johnson, top 100 linebacker out of Georgia, Luke Metz, Micah DeBose, 4-star in-state lineman. You're going to see both of you 27 commitments also back in town. And I think probably the most interesting visitor for Alabama this weekend is a guy that's in the 25 class, Antavius Richardson out of Greenville High School in Georgia. This is a kid that does not have an offer from Alabama yet. He's a USF commitment, safety prospect. Alabama does not have any safety commitments in its class right now, so that's somebody that we're probably watching pretty closely. But you are going to see a few more commitments. You're going to see some 26 guys that are going to be on campus, including a 26 lineman who was committed to Alabama this time a year ago, Zaki Helton out of Carrollton High School. He's going to have a few of his teammates on campus as well, including Alabama commitment Dorian Barney, also known as DB. So DB Barney is going to be back in Tuscaloosa for the game. So it should be an exciting atmosphere. And we'll have some more names over the course of the next couple of days that we're going to add to our visitors list as we get more confirmations. But pretty good list for the season opener. Good to get some of those commitments back, especially some of the ones that are still being pursued by other programs.
Yeah, you make a good point about you want your commitments on campus. One of the reasons is because that means they're not on somebody else's campus, right? Joseph, tell us a couple of the guys. I know the younger group looks a little bit better as far as non-commitments. Tell us a couple of guys that you're keeping an eye on and kind of like in the recruiting process. Not so much Alabama landing them, but players you like as a player and you're interested. Andrew mentioned one that's obviously Antavius Richardson, who's who's a guy that we saw his film, big guy, can run, one of those guys. And again, we go back to Bama staff doing really well evaluating, digging deep. I think he's a classic example of that.
Yeah, I'm going to highlight Amari Saab and Xavier Saab, the younger brothers of Keon Saab, both visited earlier this year, back on for the February 3rd junior day. That was before Keon announced his transfer to Alabama. Xavier Saab is a top 10 player overall in the 2027 cycle, number 9 overall, number 2 athlete, and number 1 in the state of New Jersey. And then Amari Saab, 2026 prospect, has a number of offers, including Penn State and others. So, those are a couple guys that are interesting just because of the last name, being related to Keon, being offered earlier this year, and how dynamic they are in the gridiron. Xavier Saab in particular, you look at his numbers and across the board, kickoff, returns, punt returns, receiving the ball. Even on the defensive side, he had 31 tackles and a few picks last year, looking for a great sophomore season. And speaking of sophomore, Xavier Crowell out of Jackson High School. I mean, he's one of the top players overall in 2027 cycle. Number 2 running back, he's one to pay attention to. So, like we mentioned, it's not going to be a big visitors weekends per se, just because of the game. And, also there's, scheduling, obligations with, teams, with kids' high school teams and where they're going with that. So not a huge group, but the guys that they're getting in, especially the younger guys, there's some noteworthy names in there for sure.
Yeah. It's been quiet. I've enjoyed this recruiting cycle, although I felt like it all came in spurts with 6 weeks, everyone committing. And then, we tried to say, hey, everybody wanted a commitment every day. And if you open all your presents before Christmas, it's a little light on Christmas. You're counting on your aunt to show up with an ugly sweater. Not necessarily speaking that in terms of recruits, but it's been quiet. AK Deer kind of quieted the crowd a lot. But this staff did a good job of getting ahead. And we knew, Andrew, I'm going to let both of y'all talk on this. We knew the recruiting was far from done. I remember making it to the dead period after the June visits, and I had people celebrating like we did it, we made it. And I was like, dude, this is halftime. You haven't won anything, because now, they've been flirting, and now it's really about to get serious. They're really about to start asking your girlfriends out or your boyfriends out. They're about to really start pushing that envelope. Andrew, tell us kind of where that sits as far as kids taking visits. We know Caleb Cunningham is taking a visit. Just give us some of your thoughts. You've been covering this a long time, and exactly what you expect and what you expect to see.
Well, you're on the offensive right away. You're going after as many guys as you possibly can. I mean, we saw that during the spring with, hundreds of recruits that were coming in for visits, just for spring practice. We had never really seen that before. We always saw recruits come in for practice, but never, that amount of kids that kept pouring in each and every week. And then you saw the official visits that started to get scheduled, and the summer camp season, then all the commitments happened. And then, then it got quiet. And Alabama currently sitting at 21 commitments in its class. And now you're on the defensive. You are playing defense for the next 3 months until that early signing period, because you do have the number 2 recruiting class in the country. And there are a lot of really good players in that class that are still very much wanted by a lot of other schools. So a lot of those schools are still pursuing, still heavily trying to get those guys on campus. I mean, Caleb Cunningham is going to take a visit to Ole Miss this weekend. He was at Ole Miss last month as well. So, in-state school still pressing hard, but he's going to be back in Tuscaloosa for the USF game and the Georgia game. Says he's still very much locked in. But you do have to worry a little, even though he says he's 100% locked in, you do have to worry a little bit when your commitments are stepping foot on other college campuses and spending time with other college coaches, or commitments to those programs, or players on the team, or fans that are telling them how much it would mean for them to play football at the school that they love. So you don't want that. You don't want your kids, your commitments taking all these visits, but it's going to happen, and it happens every single year, and everybody worries every single year about it. But 9 times out of 10, it's just kids going out enjoying a good football game. I think for right now, Alabama is 1, playing defense, and 2, trying to find who else is still out there. What positions do they need to, still fill? Defensive line, safety. They're going to have a safety on campus this weekend. Justice Terry, as we reported already this week, going to be back in Tuscaloosa for the Georgia game, big defensive line target for Alabama. So you're going to have guys like that that are going to be popping in Tuscaloosa. almost every single weekend. This is just the season opener. You're going to have a lot of games in Tuscaloosa this season where even if it's not just the Georgia game or the South Carolina game or the Auburn game, you're still going to have kids that are going to pop in for the USF game or whatever game it's going to be that are going to be on Alabama's radar that they're going to really be pushing for.
Yeah, we don't even know who'll show up this weekend. I mean, you play Friday night, you twist an ankle, you don't make the trip the next day. And heaven forbid somebody's car breaks down, because every time we can't make it, I don't even report they had car trouble. They're like, oh, sure they did. I'm like, no, tires go flat, but you wake up tired, or, on the flip side, you wake up, it's a short trip to Tuscaloosa and you want to see a free game and your buddy wants to go. We've seen that plenty of times.
Or your team has a bad game, you lose 42-0, and your coach says, guess what, guys, be at the field tomorrow, or we're going to be watching film all day tomorrow, so you're not going anywhere. So a lot of that stuff happens. I mean, there's so many different things that happen that can cancel a visit, but for the most part, the guys that we report typically end up coming in.
Joseph, give us your thoughts on the weekend itself, the excitement they're going to see with the first time coach, a little bit of energy, and let's talk about the commitments coming in. We haven't really talked about those guys. I mean, obviously Luke Metz has been he went from when he committed, Alabama fans, to this dude's got a lot of attention. You got Oregon beating down his door, you had Georgia beating down his door, dude's scoring touchdowns on offense, looking the part. Give us some thoughts on some of the commitments coming in.
Yeah, and I kind of wanted to talk a little bit on that last point that Bone made and mention. Look, there's three paths, right? You can have those guys committed to Alabama right now, you can have them uncommitted, or you can have them committed elsewhere. I think you'd rather have them committed to Alabama, even if Caleb Cunningham takes a visit to Ole Miss and then takes a visit to Alabama after. You'd rather have them in your class recruiting for them. Caleb Cunningham, a 5-star prospect, top 15 overall, tweeting out the elephant emojis like he does all the time and posting about Roll Tide. You want that. You want that for positive recruiting momentum, not only in the 2025 class, but 2026 as well. And looking ahead to this upcoming weekend, yes, there's a lot of excitement. I've talked with some of the recruits who are going to be in town this upcoming weekend, and they've said they want to see what Alabama's all about. They want to see what this new era with Kalen DeBoer and company, how they look on offense, and then also with Kane Womack leading that 4-2-5 defense, how that scheme looks. So there's a lot of anticipation for how the on-field product would look. Like Blake mentioned, there is a huge talent gap and mismatch with Alabama and Western Kentucky, but you want to see schematically how those guys are used, and that's a point that recruits have brought up as well. And for the commitments coming into town, you have Micah DeBose, who's recently transferred to Theodore High School, and he's still being coveted by the likes of Ohio State and others. A big-time prospect, big-time offensive lineman, a priority for Alabama staff, both under Nick Saban and Kalen DeBoer. So good to get him back in town for the season opener. You have Duke Johnson, who's mentioned about taking visits elsewhere this season. Good to get him back on campus. We'll see if he makes it to the USF game. And Dorian Barney, he just posted about that as we were recording the show, that he was going to be in town. So good to get those Carrollton guys with him and Sakai Helton, 2026 wide receiver Ryan Mosley. Good to get them, on campus. So yeah, once again, it's a good group of guys for a season opener against a team that isn't a high quality football program, high quality matchup. So and those commitments, they're excited. They're ones to be excited about.
All right, before we give our final thoughts, we want to ask you guys to do us a favor, give us a like and a thumbs up. Those trips to Italy for Joseph don't pay for themselves. I'm just kidding, but we're trying to hit that number. It's a little ego thing for us, but we love doing this content. We appreciate it. It's the first time doing the BamaOnLine Big Show with all 6 of us. I enjoy talking to all the guys. We text off and on all day. I mean, I talk to these two more than it's probably healthy for me anyways. I know it's enriching for them, but for me, it can be a crutch. No, I'm just kidding. But give us a like. Andrew, don't do that. Don't do that. Don't be that way, Andrew. Give us a like and subscribe. We appreciate it. And before we get out of here, I want one recruit, committed, not committed, any class. Give me one guy you really are focused on. Doesn't have to be saying he's going to Bama, but one you're really interested in following his recruitment between now and when that player signs on the dotted line. You get anybody you want. Go, Andrew.
All right. Yeah, I think
Before you say anything, I want everybody to notice how nervous Joseph is because he
Hold on.
knows.
Can I write down my answer here?
I'm letting Joseph go second instead of third. I'm going to go last because Joseph worries to death. Go ahead, Andrew. Have two, Joseph. Have two picked.
All right.
I think Justice Terry's probably that guy. One uncommitted target that Alabama's still heavily pursuing. I think Georgia is in a good spot with him right now. He's going to the Georgia Clemson game this weekend, but he's going to be back in Tuscaloosa for that Alabama Georgia game on September the 28th. How well does that go for Alabama? I mean, obviously the environment's going to be insane, but how well does Alabama perform? Are they able to get him back on campus again? Because I think it's going to require more than just one more trip to Tuscaloosa, and I think it's going to require a trip back without the Georgia Bulldogs playing, because they're at the top of the list right now. You want to get them back, for that game, but you also want to get them back for another game down the road. And he's going to wait until December to make that decision. So definitely going to be watching him pretty closely.
All right, Joseph Hastings, who's this player you wrote down? Because I know you're not. I know you eliminated Justice Terry. Andrew's going for low hanging fruit.
Yeah. I put. I don't know if you all can see it. Put down
Ty Jackson.
Yeah, that's the one. And kind of a similar situation to Justice Terry, not similar and not similar. A prospect who's right now, if they were to decide today, most would pick the in-state school. But Ty Jackson, it's Florida, like Bo mentioned. Justice Terry, people would probably pick Georgia. But with Ty, he's been on campus multiple times this year, 3 times already, including for his official visit that final weekend of June. I spoke with his father recently. He said that Alabama continues to keep up heavy communication between the two sides, and not only just with Ty, but with his parents as well. And he's expected to be in town for that Georgia game on September 28th as well. So 4th trip of the year, and we'll see. Florida, it's a program that it's kind of in a make or break year. We'll see how they do this season. His father mentioned to me and numerous reporters that how the season plays out, and how these teams look will play a factor in his ultimate decision. And he's going to be committing and signing on December 4th, that early signing period day. So yeah, Ty Jackson's one I'm paying attention to. Alabama obviously lost a commitment recently, Jaden Harmon, linebacker commitment. So Ty is definitely a name to watch just in terms of him getting on campus again, and if he gets on campus another time after that.
Yeah, I agree with both of you. I tell you, the guy I'm watching is a commitment. I'll tell you why. I'm watching Steve, our junior college buddy, and he's at Summit, Mississippi now, Southwest Community College. I'm watching him because I don't believe he's 268 or 270. I think our dude is going to hit 300 pounds, and I think he's going to end up on the interior defensive line when all's said and done. That's a massive guy. And I'm saying that's a massive guy. And what would that do to the dynamics of the recruiting process? Because when these guys' positions change, if Steve's an interior guy, then you're probably looking for a bandit. And again, you could get that guy in the portal, but I keep going back to Steve and talking to people. And I know I'm the same as you guys. When I saw Steve sitting next to Freddie Roach, and Freddie's a big dude and prides himself on it, wearing a shirt too small half the time. He's got some Josh Pate in him. That dude's he seemed to dwarf Freddie, did he not? And Freddie's a big dude who works out. He's still in pretty good shape and everything. But seeing Steve there, I talked to somebody that said this guy's going to be 300 pounds or there's nothing's going to stop him. If we switch him to the interior defensive line, I think that changes a lot of things with this class, because coming into this, they wanted 2 interior guys. You get him. And again, Andrew's got Justice Terry. You don't know what's going to happen with him, but you're kind of in a house money situation if you've already got your position filled, and the same for Ty Jackson. If you've kind of got your position and you're in the position, the guy we talk about a lot at the end is too good to pass up, right? That scholarship, I think your 2 guys fall in that category. But I was just, talking to some people about Steve this last week, and again, big, strong dude, and would really like to see him on the interior if that's where he ends up. Anyways, thank you guys. Andrew Bone, senior recruiting analyst and team guru, loves the team. Joseph Hastings loves football. Unfortunately, a Dallas Cowboy fan, so he gets all of his fulfillment watching Alabama and following recruiting. Does a great job for us. We're happy to have you back, Joseph. It's been maybe 3 weeks since we've been on a show together, I think. Maybe more. But happy to have both of you guys.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, happy to have both you guys. Andrew, I'll see you too much. But Joseph, glad to see you again. And we appreciate it. Like and subscribe. We hope you enjoy the show, and we'll be back doing this again. And We enjoyed it. Roll Tide. Enjoy the game this weekend. Everybody be safe.